Now, the digital economy, as a result of the fourth industrial revolution, is gradually becoming the leading direction of modern development. Digitalization is becoming an integral technological platform capable of uniting all subjects of the market era into a single economic mechanism. The digital economy, of course, creates new jobs, expands opportunities for the youth. The Nigerian youth hold the key to unlocking the country's economic prospects. In realization of these, we'll be discussing the role of the digital economy in reducing unemployment and making Nigerians, especially the youth, to become self-reliant and boost the nation's economy. We have in the studio Dr. Usman Gambo Abdullahi, the Director, Information Technology Infrastructure Solutions, National Information Technology Development Agency, NIDDA, the implementers of the National Digital Policy for Digital Nigeria. And also joining us virtually is Olubumi Fabanwo. He is an ICT expert in blockchain who joins us from Lagos. Thank you so much for joining us on DAYBREAK this morning.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
All right. Well, to begin with, going by the introduction we just had, digital revolution is changing the way things are done. And certainly Nigeria cannot be an isolation in that regard. You know, in brief, give us an assessment of the progress that have been made over the past few years in regards to the digitalization process in Nigeria.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. As you introduce, I think, you know, the journey to digital economy started a while back. But what is important is that everything, for whatever you are to do, you have to have an appropriate plan. And so that's why in 2019, Mr. President unveiled the National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy for Digital Nigeria in one of our flagship programs, the Digital Nigeria program. Now, that policy and strategy, I mean, it's a deliberate effort towards ensuring that Nigeria and Nigerians derive the maximum benefit of the digital economy. And then it is anchored on 8 pillars, but just as you said, brief, we at the National Information Technology Development Agency, one of the agencies of the Federal Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy, driving the implementation of the policy, also came up with our plan, the strategic roadmap and action plan that would coordinate the efforts of that digital transformation, our journey towards the digital economy. That particular strategy for us is anchored on 7 pillars. Like I said, the digital economy policy and strategy was anchored on 8 pillars, but ours, we tend to focus it because there's, you know, it's a collaborative initiative. It's not just the agencies within the Federal Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy. Rather, it is a nationwide and collaborative, both public and private sector organizations and the academia. So we decided to look at 7 key areas. One is digital developmental regulation. It is important that whatever we are doing, we have to do it strategically. And it's important too that you have regulatory instruments that drive the adoption and adaptation of technology. So that's one key area that we felt we have to focus the transition. The second is digital literacy and skills. Now, for us to be able, as Nigeria, to be able to effectively harness the benefits of the digital economy, Nigerians have to be digitally literate. And so that's why in that policy, the National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy, an aspirational target of having 95% digital literate Nigerians was set. And so it's ambitious. And like I said, you know, so it is the effort of everybody that has to try and see that we achieve that target. Okay. That's the second one. The third is digital transformation, digital innovation and entrepreneurship. As you indicated in your introduction, it is important we have opportunities that jobs are created for Nigeria and Nigerians. In Nigeria, we are blessed. because we have a youthful population that are highly talented, that are tech savvy. And it's important that we use digital technology to drive that, to make the best use of those opportunities for our youth. So we identified that as our focus, as another focus area. Another focus area is emerging technologies. Now, as you also indicated in your introduction, is the fourth industrial revolution. And like I said too, our youth are highly talented and are tech savvy. So we are moving, we have missed the opportunities of the first, second and third industrial revolution. Nigeria at the moment actually is in an appropriate to make the best use, to harness the fourth industrial revolution. So we identified that as key pillar 2 in the strategy to ensure that we drive the maximum benefit. Another area that we have also focused on is cybersecurity. Now, as we transit to the digital economy, everything is cyber. Our life will now becomes in cyberspace. So it's important that we have initiatives, policies, and guidelines that makes Nigerians derive maximum value in the digital space. So cybersecurity is key. And like I said earlier on, all these initiatives are not individualized, and not NIDA. NIDA is just anchoring, coordinating that. But all relevant stakeholders are involved. One last one that I need to also indicate too, area of focus is indigenous content promotion. Now, we know that Nigeria in particular and Africa in general, we are consumers of technology that are imported. We don't have opportunity to ensure that we domesticate this technology. And so we identify that as an area of focus too, for us to be able to make the best use so that we can transfer the technology. We can, government, because provides an enabling environment that will facilitate the development of products and services, technology-based products and services that we then consume what we produce and produce what we consume. So these are some of the key areas that we have focused on. Now, of course.
Okay, before you move on, before you move on, the idea is just to have you lay a background for us, kind of by way of looking at all that NIDA has been doing in the past few years. We also have another guest who is joining us virtually, like I introduced earlier, Olubunmi Fabanwo. He's an ICT expert and blockchain expert as well. But before he comes in, I would like for you to give us a brief understanding of the recently launched national blockchain policy of NIDA. Can you just in brief tell us what it's all about before we get Olubunmi to also chip in there?
Thank you very much once again. As I indicated in my brief, as you indicated, is emerging technologies. Now, blockchain is one of the emerging technologies, and Nigeria, we identified that we have to make the best use of emerging technologies. There are a series of initiatives. If you look at, for instance, cryptocurrency, Nigeria is rated as the largest economy in the world, about over 30%. That uses cryptocurrency. We have the e-naira. Even though the uptake of e-naira is not encouraging, but it's there. And we felt that it's important that we create a policy that will make the development, make Nigeria make the best use of that technology. So, and that is the basis upon which the national blockchain policy for Nigeria was conceived and then launched and unveiled. So we developed that policy, ensuring that we create opportunities for the talented youth to make the best use of the technology. And that is why that policy was created, and an implementation steering committee that consists of all stakeholders, both public, the government, the private sector, the academia, because it's important for research, us to continuously carry out research. Even though NIDA has a National Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics, which also researches on, blockchain in particular and other emerging technologies. It is felt that that should be done across the board. Private sector getting involved, public sector agencies of government getting involved, the academia, and the private sector. So that's really, in brief, what... And then maybe if I can add, we focus on 3 areas. The policy focuses on 3 areas because you have to be strategic. We've identified innovation as one key area that we focus on. Then capacity development is another area. And then the utilization of the technology, particularly in private sector, utilize the technology, but public sector organizations utilize the technology as well. So these are the 3 key areas that the policy focuses on. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Before we get back to Olubumi, I understand that there have been some hitches with his connection. Once we restore connections, all right. So Olubumi, I understand you are back. Good morning.
Yeah. Morning.
Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody.
I've been listening to Dr. Usman. But my question to you would be, we have seen, even before the government made attempts to now begin to harmonize and coordinate activities in this sector, we have seen that young Nigerians have taken the lead in embracing technology, whether locally built or foreign, and they seem to have sort of seized that space with loads of innovative ideas and wanting to key in several things. We know how much the fintechs have attracted into this country, into Africa, if you like, in general. Does it feel like regulation is lagging this innovation? Is the regulation from government catching up with this innovation such that it will provide the kind of anchor that is needed for Nigeria to draw a lot of benefit from this sector? You are privy to the kind of war of words that went out when the CBN said we don't recognize cryptocurrency and all of that, and all of the instructions it gave to bank to block accounts that are tied to crypto transactions before we started seeing NIDA and SEC lead innovations in that area by setting out frameworks and all of that. How do you think the government can lead in regards to what Dr. Usman have said?
All right, thank you very much. I think that's a wonderful question. And before I go ahead, I'd like to really applaud NIDA and say that Dr. Usman, I think that NIDA is doing a great job, especially with the blockchain policy. Of course, there are a number of places that are not covered, but I feel like that's good progress. And I would like to agree with a lot of things that he had said, because I've been a very strong follower of NIDA and the progress. I would say it's great progress. We can always do more. We can always scale, because it's very important to scale at the capacity which we are moving. We are moving like we are a small country. We're a country of over 200 million people with a teeming youth population of over maybe 60 or 70%, and 55% of them are unemployed. So it's obvious that we need to scale, and I'm sure that that's already in the plan. So that's applauding you. And in terms of regulation, that's to your question. There was a broadcast that went on just before we came to this program that talked about government and regulation getting to catch up, playing catch up at every time. Regulation and innovation are supposed to work pari passu. They are supposed to work hand in hand. And I would agree. I would say that regulation has actually been trying to catch up with innovation. You would see that a lot of the regulatory policies do not, or are necessary, they are stifling innovation, especially say in the fintech space. I would say that, yes, of course, regulation, we are trying to put a lot of things in place, put policies in place. We are just catching up. And I feel like that is drawing us back. I would say that young people, we are very resilient. Nigerian youth are very, very resilient. So we've not waited for the government to be able to do a lot of things. But the least that the government can do is sit down and look at how you can help improve on the innovation that has been created, not stifling it. You mentioned the crypto space. It's understandable if a government decides to put a pause on a particular innovation that they see that will hamper the progress of the country generally. I totally agree with that. However, I think it is high time everybody sits down and see how, we can move on, we can move ahead. Because like Dr. Usman said, blockchain is a revolutionary technology and it's not going to wait on anybody. And we lost out on the initial 3 revolutions. And this is a good opportunity for us to be able to catch up with the 4th industrial revolution. So we would not like it that is regulation that will be taking us back or hampering us. So it is very, very important that regulation and innovation work hand in hand. Just the same way NITDA has been doing. Of course, it's an agency, but I feel like other regulators can take a cue from that and bring in private sector players, bring in people that are actually knowledgeable about this technology. Get everybody to sit down and let's discuss sandboxes. Let's discuss regulatory policies that would help improve on innovation. So I think that's what I would say.
Bumi, just to provide some perspective before we move on, do you, say for what you have said about NITDA and its approach, especially in having a two-way conversation, do you get a sense that the people in government, especially in areas where you think we could do more, do not really understand the potentials that this sector can bring, and therefore it has impacted on how that handshake, that important handshake needed to have taken place? Are you, on your part, making efforts to meet them halfway? Are they meeting you halfway, or is everybody staying in silos and saying, no, we mind this sector, we don't trust what you are doing, we don't understand what you are doing, until we are comfortable with what we do, we are not going to shift ground?
Okay, so first, from my opinion, I think that the people right there are not knowledgeable about this thing, about the technology, and maybe they are not just willing to sit down with people that are actually knowledgeable. And you would agree with me that one of the biggest problems of our countries, or one of the biggest challenges, let me say, is the trust. The people do not necessarily trust the government, and hence they do not wait for the government to do things for them. And this is historical. I'm sure that is going to change. I'm sure that we are a developing economy, so things like that are bound to happen. However, people do not trust the government's policies. People do not trust the government to come through for them. And this is me speaking in the simplest lingua. So people would go ahead to innovate. People would go ahead to sell their innovations or solutions to other clients, rather than come and sit down and call on government structures and say, look, this is what I've created. Why not adopt this? Or why not create a particular regulatory policy that can promote a product like this, or what I've built? So that's why you find out that we are exporting a lot of talent. Most of the biggest cybersecurity professionals, most of the biggest blockchain experts are from Nigeria. You see Nigerians are leading the space in a lot of, even in AI, in several parts of technology of the 4th industrial revolution. You see that Nigerians are leading. All right.
Okay. All right. I'd like for us to touch the specifics, if you may. Are there certain areas, the gray areas, that you think needs attention, that you could say have been sort of impediments for people like you in that sector, in the way you do things? Maybe you don't find the necessary environment, specific areas.
Okay, so first I would say that there's lack of early stage financing, which I think that the government can play a bigger role in. We do not necessarily need, VCs from outside to come and fund fintech startups. We do not need we do not need private investors to do this first before the government begins to look at it. So first thing is the early stage financing. Why does the government not say, look, I'm going to have this particular investment, reasonable investment, that is going to go into fintech, fintech startups, for example, that is going to go into edtechs. Dr. Usman had already spoken about the need for education and digital skills training. Of course, there are a lot of indigenous edtechs that can do this for us, that can help us to educate as many as millions of Nigerians, millions of young people. So why is the government not saying, I'm going to put some investment down into edtechs, I'm going to put investment into fintechs, I'm going to put investment into blockchain startups, start building solutions for Nigeria. We do not need to wait to export some of these solutions. There are brilliant people that can get things started. There are brilliant people that have ideas. I'm just...
All right. Well, let's come back to Dr. Usman here in the studio. I'm sure you followed him all through.
I have.
In all the plans, in all the policies, some of them that you have reeled out earlier when you were speaking, is there a deliberate attempt to touch on issues such as he raised, the issue of early stage funding, for instance, for fintechs, for tech experts and the rest?
Thank you very much. I think it's always good to have this kind of interaction. Why? Because there seems to be, of course, as he indicated, I'm glad that he indicated that we in NIDA, the approach for us is developmental. What we do in terms of creation of policies, regulatory instruments, is to engage all stakeholders. Because just as he said, we don't claim, knowing everything. Those that are within the industry know it better. So we co-create regulations. Now, you may be aware of the Nigeria Startup Act that was signed into law. Now, in their act, I'm glad all these things are coming up. So we co-created the Startup Act to support startups in Nigeria. One of the key areas that we identified, of course, we in NIDA, yes, unfortunately, because of lack of those capacity, lack of funds, we take Nigerian startups on a yearly basis to series of international events. Why? Because of these challenges that we have, because you need funding, and for us in NIDA, we don't have sufficient funds to be able to accommodate. So we create opportunities for them. And wherever we go, because of the talent, because of the capacity of Nigerians. In fact, we attract investors. So if you look at GITEX Gulf Information Technology Exhibition, they almost everywhere we've been to, we've been going to GITEX for a very long while, and every year our startups, win first prizes in most cases, and they attract investment. So the Nigerian Startup Act, government was deliberate, set up a special, startup funding that will be managed by the Nigerian Sovereign Wealth Authority. And that government will be injecting, I think, 10 billion every year to that fund. And startups, a startup portal will be created such that all the startups can register and be able to access not only the funding, but also other opportunities. Because the key thing, the most important thing, as he indicated, is utilization of the technology. And that is one area that really we are making deliberate efforts to ensure that particularly government, patronizes those innovations that are coming on board. Government provides fund, and government provides opportunities for the startups to create solutions for government.
But these startups we are talking about, it's more generalistic, isn't it? Is it targeted at people in tech, such as?
Yes. Of course, for us, we focus on tech startups. So it's just focusing on tech startups. So there are other initiatives that captures other startups, general startups in terms of, but technology is really different, I would say, because technology is pervasive. It is in almost every sector. So we have, startups in education, startups in health, startups in agri, startups in the oil and gas, all that make the best use of technology. Because these technologies are not just, you just focus on information technology or ICT and then do that. No, it's across all sectors of the economy. Right. So as long as there is the application of digital technology, that qualifies the startup to being, funded for those initiatives.
So, Doctor, before we come back to Bumi, in your opening remarks, you talked about pillars and all of that, and now in expanding your thoughts, you talked about startup in various sectors. From what you do at NIDA and the kind of interaction you seem to have with other government agencies, especially those critical ones, education, health, do they understand how much the adoption of this innovation can double output, can increase efficiency? I mean, in the hospital management, but we understand today that you can go from Gwagwalada to Abuja, and your records, as you arrive, if they put in your PIN numbers, they can access all the records and medical information without having you to transfer papers and all of that from point A to B, which is one of those things we are talking about. But you saw during the COVID era, when movements became completely impossible, private universities migrated online. And the public universities were telling us they needed infrastructures in the region of hundreds of billions to be able to simply offer lectures online. Wise businesses that were smarter, even private nursery schools had all migrated online. Does it suggest with those kind of comments from your interaction with them that people even understand that they can scale whatever services they are offering by merely adopting innovative solutions that are readily available if they are willing to just come out of their cocoons and extend and open up themselves to the world or to some of the things you are doing?
Thank you very much. Well, I mean, you're right in saying that. I mean, that's a challenge. That has been a challenge. And, you know, things are changing because we identify that, you know, it is important that you sensitize. You start by sensitizing the public sector organizations. And so we've been deliberate in that, engaging critical stakeholders in all the sectors. In education, we work very closely with Federal Ministry of Education, as well as the, you know, parastatals within the ministry. In the health sector, we do the same. In the oil and gas sector, we do the same. We have, you know, the ministry, you know, as well as the NNPC, or as well as other parastatals. So we do this, we engage. However, in some of the sectors, particularly for the oil and gas, they have really progressed exponentially, because if you look at it, the adoption and utilization of technology is immense in that sector. However, in education, I mean, we are trying, in education, because just as you have indicated, during the COVID era, we were challenged because, you know, of course, but the Ministry of Education came up with kind of initiatives such that, yes, even though the technology is not there, so they created a portal and made it available to everybody. And there is massive kind of information. And the good thing is that the content was developed locally. So they engage institutions like Yaba College of Technology and others to develop the content and made it available. And there's so much content. And actually now they are scaling that, you know, so that they do. But the issue of infrastructure is a challenge. And government realizes that, for instance, in agencies like us, National Information Technology Development Agency, TEDFON in particular, the NCC, Nigerian Communications Commission, are making efforts towards provision of infrastructure. For instance, for us in NIDA, every year we provide what we call digital economy centers, about 80 with e-learning solutions across communities. And NCC does the same, USPF and TEDFON, particularly for tertiary institutions, do the same. So yes, the issue of infrastructural deficit is there.
Okay.
And so government is making deliberate effort at addressing that.
All right. Let's talk about digital literacy at the rural level. Recently, we saw the cashless policy, sort of, well, not totally cashless policy, but the central bank's attempt at a cashless system, reducing cash in circulation and the rest of them. And we saw how people in the rural communities were greatly hit by that policy. And as it is now, it doesn't look like we're making any headway with that, you know, and all that. What's NIDA doing in translating the level of sophistication we see in the urban areas to the rural communities?
Thank you very much. I mean, it sort of builds in nicely with what I said, you know, in terms of infrastructure. We have realized that gap, and essentially we are engaging relevant stakeholders. For instance, now, almost, even in rural areas, you have people with smartphones. And there are digital literacy and skills content that were identified, developed, that are suitable for the rural community. And so we are making such kind of things available in collaboration with relevant stakeholders. But more importantly, our intervention, deployment of infrastructure, focuses on rural areas so that we can bridge that digital divide in terms of infrastructure as well as in capacity. As I said earlier on, the target that we hope to achieve by 2030 is 95% digital literacy in Nigeria. We cannot achieve that if we don't reach out to the 50% of Nigerian population that are in the rural areas. So NIDA, as well as other relevant stakeholders, are making deliberate efforts towards addressing that through the provision of infrastructure.
Right. Okay.
And others.
Thank you very much, Dr. Usman. Bumi, if you are still there, you have 40 seconds quickly to give us your closing remarks, your final take on this. What are the low-hanging fruits? What do we need to do quickly to ramp up capacity, around what is happening with our youth and create the enabling environment for people to thrive?
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are doing pretty good, to be honest. However, like I mentioned in the beginning, we have to scale. And by scaling, that means that you have to bring in the right partners, the right private partners. There are a lot of organizations out there, big organizations, that are willing to partner with governments in terms of digital literacy, in terms of education, things that Dr. Usman had already mentioned. So we have to move fast in bringing in the right partnership so that we can be able to educate more people. We are not just talking about thousands. We are talking about millions of people. So let's duplicate what we are doing. Let's treat it like business development. Like NIDA should not see itself as a government agency. I understand it is, but then let's move like we are actually building a business, because this is holding to the future of the country. And I would also like to say, in terms of regulation, whoever is listening to me, regulators, we need to sit down with the people in the space, people that actually know these things. Let's come up with actual regulations that will help progress the space. And lastly, I would say that one thing that can accelerate in terms of digital infrastructure to rural environments, because there are a lot of them, I think is providing digital finance services. If you go to anywhere in Kenya, any people that are selling by the roadside in any city in Kenya are able to receive funds, they're able to receive money just with their mobile phones, not even smartphones. So I think that we need to bring in...
Who is an ICT expert and also blockchain expert. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak. And Dr. Usman Gambo Abdullahi, Director of Information Technology Infrastructure Solutions of NIDA. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, that's our show for today. In case you've missed, you can always catch up across all our social media platforms and also on our YouTube live stream. I am Ayuba Ila. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
I am Sunday Michael Ogo. Let's do this again tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching.